Since the mid-19th century, scientists have realized that there's a specific relationship between particular parts of the brain and language, that certain areas are associated with aspects of language, language production and access, just as particular areas of the brain are shown to control various motor skills and other vital functions. In the early 19th century, a scientist named Franz Gall went a bit in the wrong direction when he maintained that language and intelligence were a function of the frontal lobes, okay? He came to this conclusion because he had noticed that the smart people he knew seemed to have large and high foreheads with bulging eyes, suggesting to him that an unusually large brain was pushing the eyes outward. This later led to his later development of phrenology, the study of personality based on the shape of a person's skull. Take a look at some of these things. Yeah, where parts of the way we perceive things are situated in the brain. But anyway, enough of that. Just dump that. Okay, go back to this one. As inaccurate as Gall's idea was, it did give rise to the realization that the brain wasn't just an unstructured blob of gray matter, but that particular functions were localized in specific areas. And this was called, aptly, the localization theory. Not only that, but the areas in which particular functions were localized had seemed to be distinct modules of the brain, structures which controlled similar aspects of cognition, such as language or spatial relationships or various personality traits. In the first distinct cognitive module of the brain to be proven scientifically was the one specialized for language. In 1861, Paul Broca related language to the left side of the head, and particularly to the bottom rear part of the frontal lobe of the left hemisphere, right there, right now called Broca's area, as I said before. Broca found evidence for his claim in the damaged brains of aphasia victims. He observed that damage to the lower part of the left cerebral hemisphere caused loss of speech, or aphasia. From this, he concluded that the human facility for spoken language was seated or lateralized in the left hemisphere of the brain. This discovery wasn't really new, as the Greek physicians of Hippocrates' time had also reported speech loss and the right side paralysis in people who had damage to the left side of the head, the left front side of the head. Okay. In 1874, another specific cognitive module was identified and related to language function and discovered by Carl Wernicke. He found that an area in the upper rear part of the temporal lobe, okay, instead of pointing there, I'll point here. We're looking at a person who has his chin a little bit up. It's not totally, so it is there. Okay. And this area is related to word choices and speech comprehension. Again, Wernicke's discovery came from observing aphasia victims, patients who had damage to that particular part of the left hemisphere. People with damage to what is now called Wernicke's area have trouble choosing the appropriate word, often producing fluid but comical sentences, and they have a hard time understanding what is said to them. Let me say that if you go to YouTube, you can find videos of people with Broca's aphasia and Wernicke's aphasia, so I suggest doing that. Anyway, these days we don't need to rely completely on observing people with brain damage in order to see the activity in various areas of the brain, because we now have MRIs and PET scans that can show real-time brain activity as related to specific tasks. The consensus is that the higher cognitive functions of the brain, such as language, are asymmetrical. That is, unlike other parts of the body which are symmetrical, we have two arms and they're pretty much the same, and two eyes and they're pretty much the same for ears, etc. Certain cognitive and motor functions are seated in either the right or the left hemisphere of the brain, usually not in both. So although a brain function may often initially activate areas of the brain in both the right and the let's see, the right and the left hemisphere. It ultimately becomes lateralized to one side or the other, and for language, it's lateralized into the left side.